All right, what's going on again? Josh from Slide Science. Today's video, we're going to be covering entry techniques geared towards the beginner. I'll be breaking them down step by step. If you're more advanced, I've been doing this for a while, and you're just looking at tips or examples, there'll be timestamps in the description, to feel free to jump ahead to whatever you want to watch as far as the techniques go. If you are a beginner and you haven't watched my previous video on tips before starting driving, I recommend you watch it. The link will be in the description. That kind of covers everything I'm doing in this video to be able to enter that you should know prior to. That being said, today we're going to be covering the power over, the clutch kick entry, the handbrake entry, and the feint entry. We'll break down the pros and cons of each, how to do them, and then the dangers or common errors that I see when people are using these techniques. With that being said, let's get into it. All right, guys, the first one we're going to talk about is the power over. It's a very simple technique. This one's geared towards someone very brand new, and it kind of takes out all the additional inputs, and it's good for just starting drifting or understanding how to get the car to oversteer, begin drifting, and making steering and gas pedal inputs. So all you're going to do for this one is, like it sounds like, power over. You're going to use the power of the car, the throttle, to oversteer, over rotate the car and get it into drift, and then you're going to use your hands and throttle modulation to maintain the drift. Easiest way to do that with someone new, whether it's in the sim or a car, you're going to need a larger open area, somewhere that you can just drive in circles, not sharp circles like a donut. That's kind of not going to help you for what you're trying to do when you get to the more techniques. So start in a wider circle, and then just use the throttle to get the car to over rotate and start drifting. So I'll kind of talk through it while I do it. On the simulator, I like to use Nevada Freight Depot. I'm driving the Livery Delivery 370 currently, which has like 400 some horsepower, so plenty to do a power over. So all I'm doing is driving in a wide circle. The steering input's already in, like we talked about in the last video, but my steering input's already in. So all I have to do is use the throttle to get it to over rotate, release the wheel, let it counter steer, catch it at the angle I desire, use the throttle to maintain the drift, and then just continue the steering inputs in the circle. So executing it, I'm already in the circle. It's a good wide one. I'm going to use the throttle and get it to over rotate, counter steer, and then just modulate to maintain the drift. And now I'm trying to tie that hand and foot together. As I make an input, I add throttle like this. And if I'm trying to take the counter steer or trying to take out angle, then I just release the throttle and let it counter steer. And that's the power over. That's doing it with just a circle. Now I use it as an entry. If you're going to use this at the track, you're going to need a decent amount of horsepower, not be going too fast to actually have power to be able to over rotate the car. So slower is better, kind of right there at the entry or starting point of your torque or power curve of your car. So driving, I'm going to make the steering input first very aggressively, and I'm going to hit the throttle probably slight before to get the car to start to over rotate quicker. So input and throttle at the same time until it oversteers. Car starts to rotate, let it counter steer, catch it, and then adjust as necessary to maintain the drift. So that's the power over. Pros of this one, like I said in the beginning, it's easy for someone that's just starting out and just trying to do circles. The cons of it, if you don't have a lot of horsepower, it's going to be hard. If you're going too fast, you could understeer and end up in the wall like I showed in the last video, where the car won't actually start drifting, or it's inconsistent, or you don't have enough power to maintain it. So this works great if you're kind of already doing circles, because you can use it to teach or build on the next topics or build on hand control and throttle. But it's very hard to do at a track where you have a specific line. So I'd recommend using this in an open area or a skid pad. And that's pretty much it for the power over. We'll start to go on the more fun ones next, the clutch kick. All right, now we're going to be talking about the clutch kick. So I'll talk through it first. I'll talk as I do it again, and then show you some errors and mistakes or considerations when doing this. So the clutch kick, just like it sounds, you're going to use a steering input in the direction of drift. So left hand for left, right hand for right. You're going to push the clutch in, increase the RPMs to get the car into its power band or have enough torque to break the wheels loose. And you're going to release the clutch while maintaining the throttle. And that's simultaneous with the input. You don't want to hold the input, or you're probably going to over rotate because you're already turning too sharp. So it'll be a turn in and kick the clutch at the same time. The car will then enter the drift, start to over rotate. You release the wheel, counter steer, catching it the angle you want, get back on throttle and power through it. If you have a turboed car, lower horsepower, and you're entering slower, you may need to clutch kick it again after you enter, once the car gets the angle you want to actually maintain the drift and not grip up and slingshot you the other way. All right. Considerations while I do this is understanding that if you're going too fast and my wheel speed is maxed out, or I cannot go any faster in this gear, I'm not going to have power to actually be able to enter. So you probably want to be going at a steady RPM. I recommend when you're starting to do this at a constant RPM or constant speed based off the track or corner that you're using to start this on. Roughly at the bottom of your power band, so around 3,000, probably 4,000 RPMs prior to kicking it. That way you don't max out your gear as soon as you go to clutch kick in and it never happens. So I'm going to make the input and I'm going to clutch kick at the same time and do it. Let it counter steer, adjust throttle as necessary, and then power out of it. I'll do it again to the right, using the right hand. Same thing, clutch in, power, steer, release. Considerations on top of your power is going to be how aggressive you turn in, and how much you maintain the throttle after you kick it is how much snap to angle you're going to get, or how much angle you're going to get. This is an accelerating entry, meaning that you're meant to keep picking up speed after you enter. So if I stay on throttle, I'm picking up speed as I go through the corner, and that's kind of the benefit of this. It could be a sharper corner, but you're trying to gain speed after you enter. That's where this can come in handy, and it's commonly used in the next techniques. It'll also be used in my next video for transitions. Just understanding with this, if I want a snappier entry or it's a sharper corner, I'm going to turn in more and then kick it to get a faster rate to angle, so I have more angle to get around the corner if it's sharper or a narrower track. Common things that can go wrong with this is not enough power. So if I fail to give it enough throttle when I kick it in, it might not enter, and then it could oversteer back the other direction and then throw me into the wall or something. So making sure you're fully committed. I would practice this without even trying to drift, or just getting the car to break traction with a slight input and then stop the drift is what you could do when you're starting out. Other things with this, if you hold the wheel too long. So if I clutch kick and I don't release the wheel, once the car starts to over rotate, then I'm going to continue steering in the direction I'm trying to go, and the car's going to over rotate too far to where you can no longer catch the drift, and you're basically just going to spin out like this. I released it too late, so I could not catch the car at the angle I wanted to be at. So figuring out that happy medium between the throttle and how much counter steer you need, or how much angle your car can drive at, is going to be up to you. And test that. I'd rather you spin out once or twice first to understand the limit of your car, and then dial it back from there, versus if you just kind of enter very carefully a bunch and never, you think you're drifting, but really you might be at a very shallow angle like this, not actually doing anything, but kind of on the verge of over versus understeer. So I'd recommend you do the extreme first in a safe area, and then dial it back from there, so that you know your car's capabilities and how much steering and how much throttle correlates to what the car is going to do. All right, the third one we're going to talk about is the handbrake entry. So before we go into this, understanding if you have a hydraulic handbrake, make sure it's bled properly, which means it should be the same engagement every time and always lock the wheels up. But no matter what your speed is, it should work. Make sure it's bled right, understand your engagement point. If it's a cable, understanding how much pressure it takes and how fast you need to be going to get the car to be unsettled and that e-brake to actually function. To correlate that to the simulator, I have a handbrake in my cars. So I have this set up to where I pull it about 3 inches and it will lock up the wheels. If I had a cable or a factory style e-brake, I would probably mount it down here and make it take more throw to match my car. So that way that muscle memory is the same from the simulator to the car, and vice versa if I'm setting up the simulator to match my car. Key things to know about the handbrake entry is going to slow your speed. So the handbrake entry is using a brake to get the car's rear end to follow or come out and enter a drift. Naturally, it's going to slow you down. So to compensate for that, enter faster, or this works great on a decelerating corner or trying to decelerate the car because you're slowing it down while maintaining the angle. This can mix with clutch kick entries. It can mix with the next one when we get to the feint. Just understand that it will slow the car down, so recommend when you're starting this to enter faster. Same rules apply as the previous clutch kick. You're going to need an input, which way you're trying to get the car to go, so that way you turn the car. When I pull the e-brake with the clutch in, the rear end is not going to follow wherever I'm trying to get the front end to go or where that turn in is. So the amount of turn in I put in when I pull the e-brake is going to dictate how fast the car snaps to angle and how fast the rate to angle is, and the rate and the angle that I'm going to achieve from it. So starting out, recommend with a small input, pull and maybe hold it to feel the car slip out and how it's going to react, and make sure the brake's working. When I'm ready to actual enter, I'll just clutch in, turn in, yank it once, release the clutch back on throttle, and counter steer at the same time. It's going to take some practice, and it will also be a lot easier to handbrake entry when you get to the feint, adding it with it, because it'll kind of help you unsettle the car instead of relying on this to always lock. And if it doesn't, you shoot the opposite direction. I'll do one, and then I'll kind of break down the issues I see with this and why I recommend kind of mixing two on this, and how the clutch kick and the feint tie into this as well, for the sake of safety and mastering both techniques. So I'm going to go a little faster with this one. Slight turn in, clutch in, pull the e-brake. Comes out the angle. I didn't get enough, so I pull it and get a little bit more so I didn't float out into the wall. Now if I go slower, it might actually take more input the car to over-rotate instead of just dragging it. If I don't put in any steering input, notice the car just kind of drags until whichever side breaks loose first. So understanding smaller input, if I don't hold it that long, it's not going to kick out too far. If I make a massive input, I can get the car to rotate and snap to more angle quicker. As long as I don't hold that, it won't over-rotate. Just remember, you still have to release the wheel and let it countersteer as the rear end starts to rotate around you, or you're just going to spin out immediately. So I'll kind of snap in more with this one, larger input. We get a lot more angle on that one. Notice I came a lot closer to the inner clip because of that. And that'll tie in with our next ones. Mistakes with this one: e-brake not locking, failure to make an input while you're pulling the e-brake. Basically, your kind of timing's out. You don't have that muscle memory of to clutch and turn in immediately. So you're going to practice that, but you can do that without even driving or moving. Practice the technique. Turn in, clutch in, pull the e-brake, countersteer, and then slowly work up in speed as you start doing it. The worst thing that can go wrong with this is, like I said, is if you pull the e-brake and make the turn in, but the car doesn't actually over-rotate enough and it grips up and it starts to yank you back the other direction. So you turn it in, and then I don't do anything and it whips back the opposite direction. Really nothing else can go wrong with the e-brake entry unless you just fail to enter and you drag it and you go blowing off track straight ahead. So the best thing you can do to keep that from happening is I'd rather make a more aggressive input and get the car to over-rotate and spin out versus flying off track. So if I just make a super aggressive one and don't steer out, like sure I over-rotate and I just stop the car, but at least I didn't blow off track into a wall. You're going to use this probably in conjunction with the clutch kick in lower horsepower cars. So you'll probably e-brake to enter because you're trying to scrub some speed off, get a lot of angle. Once you're at the angle you want, you're probably going to want to get the RPMs up as that clutch is in on the e-brake, so that when you come back on the power is there, especially if you're turbo to low horsepower. So clutch in, rev it, and then dump it to light off, so I know that car doesn't grip up and throw me back the other direction because it grips up on me. Fairly simple. It's it's less aggressive. It can be less fear-inducing when you're starting out, so it's good for someone that's a beginner building off the power over. If the clutch kick's a little bit too much for you, start with an e-brake entry just to understand what the car is going to do and figure out your angle, and then work into the clutch kick, and then we'll go into the last one where we start mixing them all together and how they help each one. Okay guys, the last technique we're going to talk about is the feint entry, also called the Scandinavian flick. Feint is more or less what we call it in drifting. Scandinavian flick kind of comes from actually rallycross. It's where it kind of developed. Very similar. One just using more inputs because you have looser traction or in the dirt. So I call it the feint entry. We'll talk about the feint, how to do it, pros and cons, and then I'm going to tie it in with using the e-brake and the clutch kick in conjunction with the feint. So all you're doing with the feint is basically, let's think about doing a left-hand turn. So I'm going to make a left-hand input to enter that corner. But let's say I want to enter with more speed or carry more speed into it. So I'm not e-brake dragging. I'm not entering slower, clutch kicking, and accelerating through the corner. I want to carry the speed I have coming at the corner and continue to increase from there all the way through. So I'm going to feint it. What I'm going to do is, if it's a left-hand turn, I'm going to make a quick right turn input. So I'm going to steer it right first. What that's going to do is load the front left side up and unload that rear right, basically allowing it to be able to break traction. So all I'm going to do is make a quick right input to unload the rear right, load the front left. So now I'm going to snap it back left, and since the rear is unloaded, it's going to want to swing out on me. And that's where it kind of comes into tying in a clutch kick with it or an e-brake to make sure it does. So just doing it with that first, I'll show it, and then I'll show how you use the others to make sure it enters or to make it more aggressive. Depending on how fast you're going, how sharp and quickly you turn in the opposite direction, and then how big of an input you put back in the direction of you're trying to go is going to all dictate how fast the car enters the transition and how fast it snaps the angle and rotates into the drift so that you can carry the momentum. And the same goes when we get into using the handbrake entry with it or the clutch kick. I'll just demonstrate it without it first. So I'm just going to use throttle and steering input to get it to feint in. And then I'll talk about using it with a hand input and the clutch and the e-brake. And then we'll kind of show some issues and problems I see going ahead. So I'm going to steer right, Steer left and power in, and it goes right to angle, and I'm carrying the same speed I did coming at the corner. The weight of your car can play a factor in this, and your suspension setup too, how lazy or how responsive the car is going to be and how much grip or lack of grip you have. I'll do it going the opposite direction now. So this time I'm going to steer left and then right into it. So snap left, snap right, stay on throttle. I'm probably going to hit the wall. Nope, just missed it because I carried a lot of speed. And that's the feint with no other input, right? I'm just steering away from it, unsettle it, and then snap it back in. And it goes every time. You can see I didn't commit to that one, so it actually came back on me. Steer right throttle, steer left throttle, get it to counter steer and drive it. Now we'll talk about mixing them together. So the danger of this, right, is you don't make enough input, or you go flying off track, or it continues the direction away from the turn, which could be a wall or gravel or something that you don't want, right? So the safety net of that is when you flick in back to the direction of drift. So I turn right, and then when I come left, I'll probably clutch kick with it just to make sure that car does over rotate. Since I have it unloaded and it's looser and more likely to rotate, that's how I'm going to ensure it does it. It'll also be more aggressive. So I'll demonstrate that with doing it. So I'm going to steer right, and then when I put the input back left in, I'm going to clutch kick with it. Now I'm going to do a little faster, so I'm going to go third, and I'll probably use the e-brake to set the line if I make too big of a correction. So I clutch kick in, clutch kick back into the entry, down to second. Use the e-brake to make sure I'm not going too wide, to shorten the lineup and scrub some speed, and then power through it. You can enter a lot faster with a feint because I'm not really using power per se. I'm using the weight to get it to unsettle, and then the power. So clutch kick away, clutch kick into it, e-brake because I'm not going to make it far enough, and then throttle as necessary to judge that line. Very fun one. It looks great. It's fun to master. It's hard to get down. I'd recommend you practicing with smaller inputs. So just do some steering inputs and see what the car is going to do, right? The more aggressive you get with the flicks, the more comfortable you're going to get with the entry, understanding how your car responds and learning how to dial it in. Start slower, start with smaller inputs, adding a clutch kick. And if you do have an e-brake, I don't recommend ever overusing this thing, but use it as a safety net on this entry to stop the car if it's going to fly off. So if I snap right, snap left, and I'm going way too far, all right, let me stop it. E-brake, stomp the brakes, push the clutch in to get this thing to stop moving as fast as I can so I don't go shooting off the track. And that's how they all come into play together, right? Use the feint to unsettle the car, use the clutch kick to help break it loose, use the e-brake to set the line, or worst case, lock in the angle that you want, or to add more angle if you need it. I'll do one kind of going into the hanger up here, kind of feint that. So I know it's a left-hand turn going through here, so I'm going to snap it right, and then load it back up to the left, and then adjust as necessary to get to the front. Very fun. Obviously, the Japanese are a big fan of this. You think Mayan and style. Just recommend you understand the e-brake entry and clutch kick first. So when you go into this, you have those extra inputs for safety and understand how to use them moving forward. The harder you flick, the more you can get it to do things. All right, guys, that covers the Scandinavian flick, the power over, the handbrake, and the clutch kick entry. We're going to end the video here. If you have any questions or want to see more in detail or breakdown or talk about setups with it, you drop a comment and I'll make a video on it or reach out to you, try to help you the best I can. Next video is going to be transition, and we're using some of these techniques to build on the transitions and how to use these techniques in a transition. So look for that video coming up next. And I appreciate you guys watching. See you next time.